So we are going to talk about the filing deadlines now. So the annual income tax returns have to be filed by 31st of October of the following year. So for example, by 31st of October 2020, you have to file the tax return, apologies for the noise, you have to file the tax return for year 2019. So now is the time to prepare and file your return for prior year 2019. The deadline can be extended until mid-November, around mid-November, if you file the return using the online service ROS. So, as I said earlier, I wouldn't advise to do it on paper. I don't think anyone does it anymore. The best, the most efficient, and the easiest way is to do it online through ROS service. And a good advice would be not to wait until last minute to avoid the risk of late filing penalties, which can really be substantial. So as you can see on the screen, when you file within 2 months after the deadline, the penalty is 5% or up to over 12,000 euro. And if you file more than 2 months late, they will penalize you with 10% of the tax liability up to 63,000. So the charges can be really serious, and the revenue, they do not forget about you. They can come back to you even after a couple of years if there was a late filing. So just stay on top of your deadlines. And also it's worth pointing out that if you decide to engage an accountant to do your tax return, please bear in mind that September and October are really very busy months for them, and it may be difficult for them to find enough time to look after your tax return if you ask them to do it last minute. So just to keep that in mind. The deadline for paying your income tax liability is the same as filing the tax return. So it is the 31st of October. However, you need to keep in mind that apart from the tax due for the previous year, you also need to pay a so-called preliminary tax. This is the estimated amount of tax which you expect to pay for the current year. So now you are filing the return for prior year 2019, and you are going to pay the tax due for prior year, but you also have to pay preliminary tax for year 2020. Usually this would be 100% of the tax liability for last year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. One more important thing to keep in mind is that the tax liability, it's not only your income tax, 20 or 40% of your profits. It consists of 3 components. You can see them on the screen. So the first one is the tax itself, income tax payable on your profits. So at the rate of 20 or 40%, the higher rate. The second component is your PRSI contribution. It's usually 4% of your profits, trading profits, and a minimum of 500 euro. And the third component is the universal social charge at the relevant percentage of your income. I will show you the example later on. So the total tax liability consists of three components. All right, just bear that in mind. It's always people always forget about that. How can you pay your income tax? Tax payments can be made by credit or debit card online through ROS service, alternatively by direct debit. This is also through ROS service. You cannot pay directly by a bank transfer or a check or any other form. The payments are collected through ROS account. So if you have your own ROS account, you can set up a direct debit or pay by a credit card, or if you are using services of your accountant, they will be able to do it for you. In case you are due a refund, the revenue office will process it usually quite quickly. Sometimes it's a couple of days, or it may be a week or 2. It's usually pretty quick, depending on the season. And they will return the money directly to your bank account, but it has to be specified in ROS service. So unless you give them, so you have to give them your bank details in ROS service so they can transfer the money to your bank account.